The evening lights of the cafe shimmered against the glass like tiny fireflies caught between dusk and the neon hum of the city. Ethan Cole sat alone at a corner table, his jacket draped neatly over the back of his chair, a half-finished latte cooling beside his phone. For the third time in 10 minutes, he checked his watch. 35 years old, financially successful, socially cautious, Ethan had survived enough awkward blind dates to recognize the pattern. The hopeful anticipation at first, the polite waiting, the slow realization that maybe this was another one who'd changed her mind, or worse, simply forgotten. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair and staring out the window. Seattle's sky was the same gray-blue as the sound beyond the city, and the street outside glistened with rain. Inside, the soft murmur of conversation blended with the hiss of the espresso machine. It was a beautiful evening to be with someone. Unfortunately, he was alone. His business partner, Lucas, had arranged this setup again. "You work too much, man," Lucas had said. "You need someone who'll remind you there's life outside spreadsheets and contracts." Ethan had resisted at first, but Lucas was relentless. "She's great," he'd promised. "Smart, kind, grounded. You'll like her." So here Ethan was, dressed a little too formally, pretending to read the menu, trying not to look like someone waiting to be stood up. It was 20 minutes past the agreed time when the bell above the cafe door chimed again. He glanced up instinctively, but instead of a woman in her 30s, he saw a little girl, no more than 4 years old, making her determined way through the maze of tables. She had curly blonde hair pulled back with a pink ribbon, a matching pink dress, and tiny white shoes that squeaked softly as she walked. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. Before Ethan could process what was happening, she stopped beside his table, hands clasped neatly in front of her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear and polite. "Are you Mr. Ethan?" Ethan blinked. Yes, I am." The girl nodded as if confirming an important detail. "Good. My mommy sent me to tell you she's sorry she's late. She's parking the car and she'll be here in just a minute. She said to tell you she's really, really sorry and that she hopes you didn't leave yet." Ethan's initial irritation dissolved instantly, replaced by curiosity and a quiet amusement. He leaned forward slightly, smiling. "Your mommy sent you in here all by yourself to find me?" "She showed me your picture," the girl said confidently. "On her phone. She said you'd be sitting by the window with a candle and a cup of coffee. So here you are." She sounded so proud of herself that Ethan couldn't help but laugh softly. "Well, you found me. That's some very impressive detective work, miss." "Lila," she said seriously. "Lila Adams." "Well, Lila Adams, it's very nice to meet you. Would you like to sit down while we wait for your mom?" Lila nodded and scrambled into the chair across from him. Ethan instinctively reached out to help but stopped himself. She clearly wanted to do it on her own. Once settled, she folded her tiny hands on the table and regarded him solemnly. "Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," Lila announced. "But she said you're not a stranger. You're her friend. So it's okay." "That's very wise of your mommy," Ethan said, smiling. "And she's right. I'm not a stranger if she sent you to find me." Lila seemed to consider this, then asked in the same matter-of-fact tone, "Are you going to marry my mommy?" Ethan nearly choked on the sip of coffee he had just taken. "I'm sorry, what?" Lila tilted her head, undeterred. "Are you going to marry my mommy?" Mrs. Turner next door said mommy needs to find a husband, but mommy said it's hard because some men don't like kids. "Do you like kids?" Ethan set his cup down very carefully. "That's a big question," he said, trying to keep a straight face. Before he could answer, a breathless voice interrupted. "Lila!" A woman hurried across the cafe, cheeks flushed from the cold evening air. Her hair, soft waves of gold, like her daughter's, framed a face that was both beautiful and tired. She wore a simple coat over a floral blouse and jeans, the kind of outfit that spoke of practicality rather than vanity. "Oh my gosh," she said, scooping Lila into her arms. "Lila, I told you to wait by the door, not to wander off." "I'm so sorry," she said to Ethan, her eyes full of embarrassment. I'm Julia Adams. This is my daughter, who apparently does not follow directions. I found him, Mommy, Lila said proudly. And I told him you were sorry. Yes, sweetheart, and that was very helpful. But next time, please wait where I tell you. Okay? Julia turned back to Ethan, mortified. I'm so sorry. The parking was a nightmare, and then my card wouldn't work at the meter, and by the time I got inside, well, Lila had taken charge. Ethan chuckled softly. It's fine, really. She was very polite and delivered your message perfectly. Julia exhaled a small laugh, clearly relieved. I swear she gets more independent every week. Thank you for being so understanding. Please, Ethan said, gesturing to the chair. Have a seat. Julia hesitated, then sat, settling Lila on the chair beside her instead of across from him. I should have told you I have a daughter, she said after a pause. That wasn't fair of me. I didn't want that to scare you off before we even met. Why would that scare me off? Ethan asked genuinely. Because it usually does, Julia said quietly. She gave a small shrug, her eyes on her coffee cup. I've learned to mention it up front now, but Lucas was so enthusiastic about setting this up, and for once, I just wanted to meet someone without feeling like my life story was a disclaimer. Ethan studied her for a moment, her honesty, her exhaustion, and the protective glance she kept giving her daughter. He thought about Lila's confidence, her bright curiosity. She'd navigated a room full of strangers to find him. That didn't happen by accident. I think, he said softly, that anyone who would walk away because you're a mom doesn't deserve to know you in the first place. Julia looked up, startled. That's the kindest thing anyone said to me in a while. Ethan smiled. Then I'm glad I said it. The tension eased. They ordered dinner. Conversation flowed more easily than either expected. Lila chattered about her favorite cartoons, her cat named Biscuit, and the time she tried to make pancakes for breakfast and set off the smoke alarm. Julia laughed, the sound warm and bright. By dessert, Ethan realized he hadn't looked at his watch once since Julia arrived. As Lila colored quietly on her kids' menu, Julia looked up. You're really good with her, she said. I have nieces, Ethan said modestly. They trained me well. She can be a handful sometimes, Julia admitted. But she's my world. I can see that, Ethan said. He hesitated, then added with a teasing smile. Although she did ask me earlier if I planned to marry you. Julia groaned. Oh no, she's been listening to our neighbor again. I'm so sorry. Don't be, Ethan said. It was surprisingly flattering. Julia laughed, color rising to her cheeks. You're taking this remarkably well. Honestly, Ethan said, glancing at Lila, who was humming softly as she drew a lopsided cat. I'm starting to think your daughter might be the best matchmaker I've ever met. Julia smiled, and for the first time that night, Ethan saw something shift in her expression. Something lighter, hopeful. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the streetlights glowed on wet pavement. Inside, the little cafe hummed with quiet warmth. When they finally stood to leave, Julia thanked him again. I wasn't sure what to expect tonight, she admitted. But this was nice. It was, Ethan said. I'd like to do it again if you're willing. Julia glanced down at Lila, who was yawning now, clutching her pink ribbon in one hand. What do you think, Lila? She asked gently. Lila nodded solemnly. Mr. Ethan is nice. He makes Mommy smile. I think we should see him again. Julia laughed softly. Well, there's your answer. Ethan grinned. I'll take that as official approval. As they walked out together, Lila between them, the city lights reflected in the cafe's glass behind them. A trio of figures framed by warmth and possibility. Ethan couldn't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't another failed blind date. Maybe it was the beginning of something worth waiting for. 2 weeks passed before Ethan saw Julia again. He hadn't realized how much he'd thought about her until Lucas caught him staring at his phone during a meeting. You're doing it again, Lucas said, grinning. Checking for a text that isn't there. Ethan shoved the phone into his pocket. I'm not. Sure, man. You've got that look. The one that says you met someone who might actually get you to leave the office before midnight. He didn't deny it. They'd exchanged a few short messages since the cafe, simple, polite, but promising. Julia was busy with work and parenting. Ethan, as usual, buried himself in his projects. But on Friday afternoon, just as he was finishing a presentation, his phone buzzed. Julia. Hey. Lila's been asking when we'll see you again. There's a Saturday farmers market downtown. You free? Ethan smiled before he even realized it. Ethan, I'll bring coffee. You two bring the charm. The next morning, the market was alive with color and sound. The clink of coffee cups, the scent of roasted nuts and baked bread, laughter mixing with music from a street guitarist. Ethan spotted them instantly. Julia in a denim jacket and white scarf, Lila holding her hand and wearing a tiny yellow raincoat, even though the sky was clear. Mr. Ethan, Lila called, running to him. Her little boots squeaked with each step. She stopped, just short of hugging him, remembering some unseen rule about personal space, and instead gave a proud thumbs up. You came. I said I would, Ethan said, kneeling so they were eye to eye. And I brought something. He handed her a small paper bag. Inside was a chocolate chip cookie the size of her hand. Lila gasped. Mommy says I can have sugar if it's after lunch. Julia raised an eyebrow, smiling. We'll make an exception just this once. As they wandered through the market, conversation flowed easily. Julia told him about her job at the community center, how she coordinated programs for kids, juggling schedules and limited budgets. Ethan listened, admiring how her eyes lit up when she spoke about helping others. In turn, he shared stories from his own world, less colorful but earnest. He told her about the small tech company he'd built from scratch, about the long hours and the quiet loneliness that came with success. Lila chimed in frequently, holding both their hands now, alternating between dragging them toward flower stalls and introducing Ethan to every dog she saw. She was the natural bridge between them, dissolving every trace of awkwardness. They stopped by a stand selling handmade candles. Julia picked one up, lavender and cedarwood, and inhaled deeply. This smells like peace, she said softly. Ethan smiled. Buy it. You deserve a little peace. She looked at him for a moment, then added it to her tote bag. You always say the right thing, don't you? Not always, he said, but I try to mean it when I do. Later, while Julia and Lila sampled apple cider, Ethan found himself watching them. Julia knelt beside her daughter, holding the cup steady as Lila took careful sips. Their laughter was light, unguarded. It struck him then how easily they fit together. Not just mother and child, but a small, perfect team. And how, without trying, they'd made space for him. When the afternoon sun began to fade, they sat on a bench overlooking the waterfront. Lila leaned sleepily against her mother's arm, a half-eaten cookie in her lap. Thank you for today, Julia said. It's been a while since I had a Saturday that wasn't just errands and laundry. Thank you for inviting me, Ethan replied. I didn't realize how much I needed something simple. No deadlines, no meetings, just this. Julia smiled at that. I get it. Sometimes the quiet moments are the ones that stick. He hesitated. Julia, can I ask you something? Sure. When you told me you didn't mention Lila at first because you were afraid I'd walk away, is that something that's happened a lot? She exhaled slowly, watching the rippling water. More than I'd like to admit. People say they're fine with kids, but when it becomes real, when they realize dating me means bedtime stories and early mornings, it changes things. They don't mean to hurt us, but they do. And yet you still try, he said quietly. She looked at him, a faint smile returning. Yeah, because giving up doesn't help either. Besides, Lila deserves to see me believe in people. Ethan nodded. Then I'll try not to disappoint either of you. There was a long pause, comfortable, not heavy. The kind that happens when words aren't enough. Then Lila stirred, blinking drowsily. Mommy, can we see Mr. Ethan again next Saturday? Julia met Ethan's eyes, the corners of her mouth curving up. That depends. What do you think, Mr. Ethan? He laughed softly. I think that sounds perfect. As the evening deepened, Julia drove Lila home, and Ethan walked back to his car with the taste of cinnamon cider and quiet joy lingering in his mind. He realized he didn't feel like someone who'd just had a date. He felt like someone who'd just been welcomed into a small world. One that might, if he was lucky, become his own. Spring in Seattle came late that year. Soft rain, cherry blossoms along the sidewalks, and the hum of life returning after months of gray. Ethan found himself driving more and more often toward the quiet neighborhood where Julia and Lila lived. A tidy brick duplex with a small porch lined by potted plants and one perpetually crooked welcome mat. At first, his visits were casual Saturday coffee, an occasional lunch, small moments shared between the rush of their separate lives. But soon, those moments became habits. He started bringing breakfast on weekends. Bagels, croissants, the occasional chocolate donut that Lila declared the breakfast of princesses. Sometimes Julia would text him late at night. "Lila's asleep. I just finished grading volunteer reports. You still awake?" He usually was. They talked for hours about everything. Music, books, work frustrations, the strange comfort of routine. It was easy, unforced, the kind of connection that sneaks up on you when you stop expecting it. One Sunday morning, he arrived to find Julia crouched by the garden, tugging stubborn weeds from between rows of tulips. Lila sat beside her with a plastic shovel and a bright yellow watering can. "Morning," Ethan said, leaning against the fence. "Looks like hard work." Julia glanced up, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "It's easier when someone brings coffee," she teased. He held up a cup. "Already ahead of you." She smiled, that tired but genuine smile that made his chest tighten every time. "You're getting good at this." "At what?" "Showing up," she said simply. By late afternoon, they were sitting on the porch steps, the sun turning the wet pavement to gold. Lila was sprawled out beside them, drawing with chalk. "This one's our house," she said, sketching wobbly lines. "And this is Mommy. And this is me. And this—" She drew a taller stick figure with messy hair. "This is Mr. Ethan." Ethan chuckled. "I've been promoted to stick figure status." "It means you belong," Julia said softly. Her tone surprised even her. Ethan turned to look at her. She quickly busied herself gathering the chalk pieces, but he caught the faint flush in her cheeks. Over the next few weeks, "You Belong" began to take shape in small, tangible ways. Lila insisted he join them for dinner at least once a week. Julia taught him how to make her famous blueberry pancakes. The ones Lila claimed were magic because they made sad days better. Ethan burned the first batch, but Lila declared the effort a success anyway. At the park, Ethan pushed Lila on the swings while Julia watched, coffee in hand. He found joy in the little things. The way Lila laughed with her whole body, the way Julia's shoulders relaxed when she was near him, how being there felt effortless, right? One evening, as they walked home from the playground, Lila reached up and slipped her small hand into his. No hesitation, no question, just trust. He looked down at her, then at Julia, who met his eyes with quiet gratitude. "Looks like you've been officially accepted," she said. "I'm honored," Ethan replied, his voice catching more than he expected. Later that night, after Lila had gone to bed, they sat in the living room surrounded by the soft clutter of family life. Colored pencils, laundry baskets, an unfinished jigsaw puzzle. Rain pattered against the window. Julia looked around with a small laugh. "It's not exactly glamorous, is it?" "It's real," Ethan said. "And I like real." She smiled, her expression tender but uncertain. "Sometimes I still worry this is too much. My schedule, the chaos, Lila. You deserve someone who can meet you halfway, not someone constantly juggling." "I don't need perfect," he said gently. "I just want honest. And this," he gestured to the room to her, "is the most honest thing I've known in years." Julia's eyes shimmered. "You say things that make it hard to breathe." "Then I'll shut up," he said softly. "Don't," she whispered. Their first kiss wasn't cinematic or perfectly timed. It happened right there, amid the sound of rain and the faint hum of Lila's nightlight upstairs. It was hesitant at first, then deeper, something both fragile and certain all at once. When they finally broke apart, Julia laughed quietly. Lila's going to ask questions. Then we'll tell her the truth, Ethan said. That we're figuring things out. Together. In the weeks that followed, they did just that. Figured things out. Ethan started staying for bedtime stories. Lila loved when he did the funny voices, especially when he mispronounced unicorn, just to make her giggle. Julia grew used to his jacket hanging by the door, his coffee mug next to hers in the morning. And Ethan, he found himself feeling something he hadn't in years, home. One Sunday, while Julia was folding laundry, Lila marched into the room with a serious expression. "Mr. Ethan needs a toothbrush," she declared. Julia looked up, startled. "A toothbrush?" "Aha," Lila said firmly. "Because he always sleeps on the couch now when it's late. And people who sleep here need toothbrushes. That's the rule." Julia hid a smile. "That's a good rule." When Ethan arrived that evening, she handed him a blue toothbrush with a grin. "House rules," she said. He laughed but understood the meaning behind the gesture. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about belonging. About being part of their world, not just visiting it. That night, after Lila was asleep, Ethan and Julia sat on the couch again, quiet but comfortable. "She's growing attached to you," Julia said softly. "I want you to know that. I don't want her to get hurt if—" Ethan reached over, taking her hand. "I'm not planning to go anywhere." Julia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. She smiled faintly. Okay. They sat together in silence, fingers intertwined. The faint rhythm of rain against glass echoing the calm heartbeat of a home slowly forming around them. Outside, spring carried on, unhurried, inevitable. Inside, so did love.